Try to imagine this. You are standing in the middle of the African savanna, not standing in the tourist sense, no jeep, no guide, no phone in your pocket, no knife in your belt. You are standing there in the completely naked sense, barefoot, empty-handed, a thin piece of cloth covering your body. And around you, in the golden afternoon casting shadows across the shoulder-high grass, is an ecosystem that has been operating for millions of years before humans appeared. To your left, a pack of hyenas is sitting still and watching. On a rock 200 meters away, a lioness is lying stretched out, eyes closed but her two ear rims slowly turning toward you. Farther away, a herd of 800-kilogram buffalo each moving as a black mass along the horizon. You have nothing, not a single thing. Yet your ancestors stood in exactly that spot, not once, not for one generation, but for millions of years in a row, and not only survived, but became the dominant species on this planet. With bare hands, no guns, no gunpowder, not 1 gram of metal. Why? Seriously, think about this for a moment. A human standing empty-handed in the savannah, in purely biological terms, is prey. Slow prey, weak prey. Prey with no claws, no fangs, unable to see in the dark, unable to smell danger from afar. You would think humans should have gone extinct a very long time ago, but the opposite happened. And the reason is not one thing. It is never just one thing. There are many layers of explanation, each layer even more astonishing than the one before it. And together they paint a picture of something deeper than history, deeper than civilization, deeper than anything we usually think about when we talk about human strength. This goes very deep. Let us begin. Begin with something that sounds unrelated, but is actually at the center of everything. You are weak, not you specifically, but humans as a species compared to what nature has created to hunt and survive. We are a design so bad it is almost funny. No claws, no fangs, no fur for warmth, running slower than most things that want to eat us. An adult chimpanzee is 4 to 5 times stronger than a human. A brown bear flips a 400-kilogram rock with one hand. A lion takes down a buffalo 10 times its weight in a few seconds. On paper, if nature is a recruiter, our resume gets rejected in the first round, yet we dominate. And the reason is not in our muscles. A study published in Nature Neuroscience in 2018 directly compared human and chimpanzee cognition. Chimpanzees beat humans in immediate short-term memory, faster, more accurate in tasks requiring instant reflexes. Hearing this, you would think chimpanzees are smarter than humans, but that is where the story reverses, because there is one thing chimpanzees absolutely cannot do, no matter how many years of training. They cannot imagine a future more than a few minutes ahead. They cannot plan for tomorrow in the real sense. They cannot look at scattered raw materials and envision a tool that has never existed. They cannot ask themselves, if that happens next week, what will we do? The human brain takes up 2% of body weight but consumes 20% of total energy every day. No other species pays such a high biological price for a single organ. That is nature's all-in bet, giving up claws, fangs, and speed to gain one single thing, the ability to see tomorrow from today. A tiger attacks when hungry, when prey is in front of it, when everything converges at the right moment. An ancient human hunter looks at deer tracks left from yesterday morning and calculates, this stride, this distance shows it is heading toward the eastern stream. The sky is hot. Tomorrow morning it will come back to drink. We will not chase it. We will get there first and wait. No need to be faster than the deer. No need to be stronger. Just need to be in the right place at the right time, calculated in advance by a brain capable of simulating the future before the future happens. Ancient humans did not win because they were stronger, not because they were faster, not because of better weapons in the simplest sense. They won because they were the only species on this planet that could fight the future instead of just reacting to the present. And that is a battle no other species knows how to join. But the brain is only the hardware. What turns that hardware into a real weapon is the next layer, the thing no other species has. Try a small experiment. Try to convey this information to your dog. Tomorrow, when the sun rises, do not go toward the north because there is a hungry bear there. Impossible. Not because the dog is stupid. Dogs are intelligent in many ways we often underestimate. But there is no language between you and it that can carry information about a danger that has not yet happened, in a location it has not been to, at a time in the future. That is the limit of almost every species on this planet, and that is exactly what language broke in humans. Language is not just communication. Many species can communicate. Bees dance to indicate flower directions. Elephants use low-frequency sounds to signal danger. Chimpanzees use gestures to beg for food. But language is something completely different. Language is the technology for storing and transmitting experience across space and across time, the thing no other species has. Think about this in the most specific way. An old hunter is dying. 40 years ago, he encountered a snake species in the western swamp area. He remembers the color of its scales, the way it coils 3 times before attacking instead of 1 time like other snakes, and he remembers that chewing leaves growing near the water's edge slows the toxin long enough to run back to camp. He tells that to his 8-year-old grandchild sitting next to him. The grandchild has never been to the western swamp area, has never seen that snake, but if 20 years later it encounters that snake, it will survive. 40 years of the grandfather's experience is compressed into 15 minutes of storytelling and transferred intact to another brain. Compare that to the way a young antelope learns to avoid lions. It must observe directly, must be close enough to recognize danger, must be lucky enough to escape the first time. Slow, costly, and requires survival luck. A human child does not need to encounter a lion to know how to behave with a lion, does not need to experience real fear, just needs an adult to sit down and tell the story. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar spent many decades researching why language evolved in humans and reached a surprising conclusion. Language did not evolve primarily to coordinate hunting as people used to think. It evolved to manage complex knowledge networks and social relationships, to talk about people who are not present, to discuss situations that have not happened, to build trust with people never met face to face. The consequences of that are enormous. Each individual human is no longer a solitary creature with memory limited to their own lifetime. Each person becomes a node in a shared knowledge network, connected to everything others have learned, seen, survived through. When a skilled hunter dies, his knowledge does not disappear with him. It has been passed to 10, 20, 100 people in those evening storytelling sessions. Indigenous communities that still exist today still preserve in their language the names and medicinal uses of hundreds of plant species, ways to read weather signs from wind direction and cloud color, breeding seasons of each animal species through surrounding grass and tree signs. None of that was written down. All of it exists in language, passed from mouth to ear across thousands of years without being lost. That is an archive unmatched by any library in continuity. But language needs a place to operate, needs a space where humans sit together, quiet enough for words to pass from one person to another without interruption. And the thing that created that space, the thing that appeared before agriculture, before writing, before anything we call civilization, is the next layer. Every child learning history is taught that ancient humans used fire for warmth and cooking. That is true, but it misses 3/4 of the story. In 2021, a research group from Leiden University published in PNAS the results of analyzing more than 400 archaeological sites worldwide. Signs of organized fire use appeared simultaneously across the Old World, both Africa and Europe and West Asia, around the same time 400,000 years ago, not each place inventing it spontaneously, simultaneously. That is evidence of a technique transmitted from one human group to another across enormous geographic distances, on a scale that before no one thought ancient humans were capable of. But the real question is not when, the question is why. And the answer, according to research from Tel Aviv University published in 2025, is different from what we still think. The primary purpose of fire was not for cooking, but to protect hunted prey and repel scavengers. Think specifically. You have just taken down a 900-kilogram bison after many hours of chasing. That animal could feed the whole tribe for many weeks, but the moment it falls, the hyena pack has already smelled blood from several kilometers away. Wild dogs are approaching. Lions never pass up a free meal. Without fire, you keep the bison carcass for one night if lucky. With fire burning all night, you keep it for many nights. Fire turned ancient humans from meal-by-meal predators into owners of a food stockpile. But there is one more thing fire created. Anthropologist Polly Weissner from the University of Utah spent 30 years researching the Juhansi people in the Kalahari and recorded a repeating pattern. During the day around the fire, people talked about practical work. At night, when firelight became the only thing separating humans from the darkness outside, everything changed. People told stories, shared memories, resolved conflicts, built alliances. Weissner called it firelight talk, the first social space of the human species, where language not only transmitted information but also transmitted identity and the bonds connecting person to person. Fire is not just a tool. Fire is the first social space of the human species. And that space nourished the next thing. When hearing about ancient weapons, people think of crude, ineffective things, almost useless compared to guns and bullets. A sharpened stick, a stone tied to a handle. That is a serious mistake. In 2024, a research group from the University of Göttingen and the University of Reading published in PNAS the most comprehensive analysis to date of wooden weapons found at Schöningen, Germany, around 300,000 years old. They used micro-CT and three-dimensional microscopy to analyze every millimeter. The results were not what people expected. Spruce wood was carefully selected, only the straightest branches, no knots. The surface was scraped smooth with consistent technique. The pointed tip was reinforced with heat. When the tip broke, it was reground and continued to be used instead of discarded. This is a planned production sequence, with quality standards, with maintenance procedures, not just picking a branch and sharpening it. Claudine Gravel-Miguel at Arizona State University ran more than 2,400 computer simulations to answer why stone tips appeared in small numbers at archaeological sites. The clear answer: most stone tips were lost in the field while hunting, fell into thickets, sank into mud, never returned to camp. The group's conclusion is that even the small number found shows projectile weapons were used daily. Another study by Chauville in 2017 analyzed fractures on stone tips and confirmed they were thrown with great force, not just used for direct stabbing. That broke a rule that binds every other predator species. Lions must touch prey to kill it. Leopards must touch. Crocodiles must touch. Every hunt for all those species carries physical risk in both directions. A buffalo can gore a lion to death right when the lion is biting its neck. A cornered antelope can kick and break a wild dog's jaw right when being taken down. That is why injured predators usually die, not from the wound, but because they can no longer hunt. Ancient humans standing from 15 to 20 meters had stepped completely outside that rule. Prey had no chance to counterattack. The hunter did not need insane courage, did not need to accept bodily risk, only needed accuracy, patience, and technique. The hunt shifted from the question of who is stronger to the question of who is better prepared. That is not muscle strength, that is intelligence applied to space. And that space grows even wider when more people use it together. Try to imagine a woolly mammoth. Not the image in textbooks, but the real animal, weighing 6 tons, skin so thick that ordinary spears could not pierce it, tusks long enough to fling a grown man 10 meters away, and when wounded instead of fleeing it would turn and attack. No solitary predator on this planet could take down an animal like that and survive to tell the tale. Yet woolly mammoth bones are found at ancient human campsites across Europe and Asia, evidence of repeated hunts over many generations. How? The answer is something no other species has to the same degree: the ability to cooperate with complete strangers based entirely on trust. Ants cooperate, wolves cooperate in packs, but one wolf never cooperates with a wolf from another pack. The boundary of cooperation in all other species is the boundary of bloodline or direct familiarity. Ancient humans broke that boundary, cooperating with people they had never met based on reputation, obligation, and trust built through language. Boyd and Richardson, in a work published in Philosophical Transactions of the Royal Society B in 2009, argued that cultural evolution had created in humans an entirely new set of social instincts: shame, guilt, honor, and a sense of fairness. These emotions are not psychological decorations, they are coordination technology. When one member does not share their portion, collective outrage is strong enough to isolate the greedy and force sharing even when no one wants to. Distribution policy was enforced by social psychology, without written laws, without police. The practical result is the ability to coordinate dozens of people to surround a woolly mammoth and drive it toward a cliff, take turns guarding through the night, and voluntarily specialize according to what each person was good at. And that ability did not stop at tribal boundaries. At the siege of Kaifeng in 1232, the Mongol army faced Chinese gunpowder weapons for the first time. They could have exterminated the people who knew how to use them. Instead, they learned from the enemy, absorbed the technique, and carried it westward, because both sides calculated that knowledge was worth more than a temporary victory. That is cooperation crossing hostile boundaries, something only humans are capable of doing systematically. Cooperation allowed ancient humans to add up the strength of many individuals into a system greater than the sum of its parts. But cooperation alone is still not enough. The sixth layer is something no gun can buy. This is the strangest layer, and perhaps the most astonishing one. Humans are one of the very few animal species with the ability to sweat efficiently over the entire body. Does that sound trivial? Does it sound like something you complain about after a gym session rather than something you list as an evolutionary weapon? But follow its mechanism for a moment. Most mammals regulate body temperature by breathing rapidly, what English calls panting. Dogs do it, cats do it, lions, zebras, hyenas all do it. When body temperature rises above the safe threshold, the brain sends a signal that forces stopping and breathing to release heat through the respiratory tract. It is not a choice but a mandatory biological command. The brain cannot tolerate additional heat without permanent damage. Humans are different. Hairless skin combined with about 650 sweat glands per square centimeter creates a whole-body dispersed cooling system that no other species on the African savanna has. Humans can run at 38 degrees Celsius while zebras are forced to stop after 15 minutes under the same conditions. Not because humans run faster, but because humans can run longer than anything that wants to eat them, or anything they want to eat. The San people in the Kalahari still practice this today in the form called persistence hunting. A San hunter follows the tracks of a kudu antelope under the summer sun, without bow and arrow, without traps, just running after the tracks for 3 to 5 hours continuously. The kudu runs much faster in short bursts, but each time it stops to cool down, the hunter keeps going, and the distance gradually closes. Eventually, the animal collapses from overheating and cannot stand up anymore. The hunter approaches and finishes with a short, precise stab, with no risk. But persistence hunting is not just running. What makes it possible is the ability to read tracks like continuous reverse reasoning thinking, looking at the distance between footprints to know if the animal is running fast or slow. Looking at the weight distribution on the tracks to know if it is injured or healthy. Looking at broken grass and disturbed dust to know which direction it is heading. Louis Liebenberg, the South African researcher who spent 30 years apprenticing with San hunters and recorded it in the book The Art of Tracking in 1990, argued that the skill of reading tracks is the first form of scientific thinking of the human species. Both begin with the same operation, observing incomplete signs, building a hypothesis about the hidden reality behind them, testing that hypothesis with the next sign, and updating perception when needed. The hunter tracks the animal, the scientist tracks the truth. The same thinking structure, separated by millions of years. The 6 layers just mentioned, brain, language, fire, weapons, cooperation, endurance, each strong in its own way. But what turns all of them into real strength, what multiplies all of them and keeps all of them after the people who created them have long died, is the final layer. The layer that no species, including modern humans, fully understands about itself. Look at a lion. The lion hunting on the savanna today is doing exactly what a lion a million years ago did. The same technique, the same approach, the same starting point. If any lion accidentally invents a more effective hunting method, that method dies with it. Its offspring do not learn from stories. They must rediscover it from scratch, or discover nothing at all. That is the limit of all species on this planet, except one. Joseph Henrich, an anthropologist at Harvard University, calls it cumulative cultural evolution. The idea is simple, but the consequences are not. Each human generation does not start again from zero. They inherit the entire knowledge stock of the previous generation and only need to add their own small improvements. Over hundreds, thousands of generations, those small improvements add up into things that no one at the starting point could imagine. Look at the spear. It begins as a pointed wooden branch. Then someone attaches a stone flake to the tip with pine resin. Then someone heats the stone before sharpening to make it sharper. Then someone uses a lighter shaft to throw farther. Each improvement is kept. None is lost. Over 1,500 generations, the pointed wooden branch becomes something completely different. And then there is a story that happened in China in the 9th century that is the perfect example of this. A group of Taoist alchemists was searching for an elixir of immortality. They mixed saltpeter, charcoal, and sulfur. Instead of immortality, the mixture exploded. There are records of singed beards and burned workshops. They called it Huo Yao, fire medicine, a name that still carries traces of the original purpose, a failed medicine. No one in that room was trying to create a weapon. From that accident, the Song dynasty developed the fire lance used for the first time at the Siege of Dian in 1132. Then bronze barrels replaced bamboo tubes. Then the Mongols absorbed the technology after Kaifeng and carried it westward. Then the Islamic world. Then Europe. Then Japan in 1543. Traveling with gunpowder on those roads were paper, printing, and the compass, knowledge moving in packs rather than ever as single individuals. And there is a strange detail. China invented gunpowder. The Mongols improved it. Then the improved version returned to China to fight the Mongols themselves. Knowledge does not travel in a straight line. It goes in circles, transforms, returns to its starting point in a form no one at the beginning would recognize. No one on the first day sat down to invent the gun. There was no single moment of genius. It required many centuries of step-by-step improvement, carried across continents by trade, war, and the slow cultural exchange that quietly reshaped the world while no one noticed it was happening. The gun is not an exception to the 6 previous layers. The gun is their product. It is proof that when these 7 layers work together long enough, they create things that no one at the starting point could imagine. Ancient humans did not need guns not because they were inferior to us. They did not need guns because they were building the very thing that would eventually create them. But let us stop here, because this piece would be irresponsible if it did not say this. Not every ancient human community prospered. Not every tribe survived. And if the 7 layers above are truly that powerful, why did some human groups disappear? The answer does not weaken what has been said. It confirms it in the most painful way possible. Let us begin with the Neanderthals. These were not the primitive creatures that movies often describe. They had large brains, used fire, made sophisticated stone tools, and buried their dead with flowers and grave goods beside the body. Evidence of abstract thinking and awareness of death that very few species have. On paper, they had almost everything needed. But archaeologists noticed a consistent pattern. The range of traded goods for Neanderthals was significantly shorter than for Homo sapiens in the same period. Seashells, precious stones, and special materials found at Homo sapiens sites show exchange networks stretching hundreds of kilometers. At Neanderthal sites, most materials came from local sources. A narrower exchange network meant a narrower teaching network. When the Pleistocene climate fluctuated suddenly, small and poorly connected communities did not have enough collective transmitted memory to recall ways to survive conditions that their ancestors had probably experienced but no one remembered anymore. The second story happened more recently and more clearly. When Europeans arrived in Tasmania in the 18th century, they found the indigenous people using a significantly poorer toolkit than what archaeological evidence showed their ancestors once had. No bows and arrows, no bone hooks. Not because Tasmanians were less intelligent, but because about 10,000 years earlier, rising sea levels had cut Tasmania off from the Australian mainland. A community of a few thousand people was completely isolated. And gradually, over many generations, the most complex skills began to disappear. Not because anyone decided to abandon them, but because a complex skill requires a continuous chain of people teaching people across many generations. If one link in that chain breaks, because of disease, because the only person who knew the technique died too early, because the community was too small to maintain enough specialists, the skill disappears and may never be rediscovered. And that principle does not change whether you are talking about hook-making technique or gun-using technique. The Ottoman Janissaries and the Japanese army of the Oda Nobunaga era did not win because they had guns before their opponents. They won because they had training systems and teaching networks strong enough to turn the new tool into consistent collective skill. Opponents who also had guns but lacked equivalent teaching systems lost. The teaching network decides, not the tool. Communities did not collapse because of a lack of guns. They collapsed because they lost a teaching network large enough to maintain what they knew. And this is the part where the story becomes the most unsettling. Not because of ancient humans, because of us. Neanderthals lost their teaching network because of sudden climate change. Tasmanians lost it because geography cut them off from the world. Those things happened to them, not because they chose them. But there is another kind of loss happening right now, and this kind is different in one important point. We are actively choosing it. Guns do not make us stronger in the deepest sense. They make us forget that we were once strong like that without them. A civilization that bets its strength on something external, on tools that can be taken away, can break, can run out of ammunition, is betting on something far more fragile than what ancient humans bet on. Ancient humans bet on something internal: the brain, language, fire, projectile weapons, cooperation, endurance, and knowledge passed from one generation to the next. Those things cannot be taken away because they do not lie outside the body. Most modern people do not know how to find drinkable water in the forest, do not know how to start a fire without a lighter, do not know how to read stars to determine direction, do not know how to distinguish edible plants from plants that can kill them in a few hours. This knowledge has not disappeared from the world. It is still scattered in indigenous communities, in the memories of old hunters. But the teaching chain between that knowledge and most of the population has been broken, not because of natural disasters or epidemics, but because we voluntarily traded it. On average, one indigenous language disappears every 2 weeks. It is not just losing a way of talking. It is losing a 10,000-year-old ecological knowledge store that was never written down, names and medicinal uses of hundreds of plant species, ways to read weather from clouds and wind, which fish appear where in which season, which trees fruit before or after floods. All of it leaves with the last person who speaks that language, silently and permanently. We have traded the breadth of survival knowledge for narrow specialist depth. You can program a phone app, but cannot find food in the forest. Your ancestors could not program an app. But they could survive anywhere on this planet, empty-handed. The first gun was created by people who did not need it, alchemists searching for an immortality elixir rather than a weapon. And the real question is not why ancient humans did not need guns, The question is, are we on the way to becoming a species that only knows how to use guns? Let us return to the savannah. You are standing there. The lion is still watching from the rock. The hyena pack is still on the left. The buffalo herd is still moving in the distance. Nothing has changed in that scene, but something has changed, and that is what you know about yourself while standing there. You have 7 things inside you that no gun can provide and nothing can take away. A brain that can see tomorrow from today. A language that can transmit 40 years of experience in 15 minutes of storytelling. The ability to create social space from a pile of fire in the darkness. Weapons that can kill from a distance where prey cannot counterattack. The ability to cooperate with complete strangers based entirely on trust. A body that can run under the sun when everything else is forced to stop. And the knowledge of hundreds of thousands of years of ancestors flowing through you in ways you do not even recognize. Ancient humans did not need guns, not because the world they lived in was more comfortable. That world was more brutal than anything you can imagine. They did not need guns because they already had something stronger. A 7-layer system evolved over millions of years, and guns are just one of the things that system eventually created. The first gun in the world began its existence as a mistake, created by people who were never trying to create a weapon. The lion on that rock, it knows that. Even if you forget, the real question is not why ancient humans did not need guns. The question is, do you still remember how to be a person who does not need guns? If you find the layers just mentioned worth thinking about, perhaps this is the channel for you. We dig deep into questions like this every week. Subscribe so you do not miss them, and more importantly, to keep the habit of questioning things that most people take for granted.